Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. Today, we're heading to New York City on December 8th, 1980. And I need to tell you up front, this is a painful and challenging story. It's about the night John Lennon, one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century, was shot and killed outside his apartment building by a man who claimed to be a fan. And here's what troubles me most about this moment. This wasn't random violence. This was the collision of celebrity culture, mental illness, and a kind of obsession that our modern media landscape seems to create and amplify. Understanding what happened that night and why forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about fame, parasocial relationships, and whether we've created a culture that makes tragedies like this almost inevitable. Picture this. It's just before 11 p.m. on December 8th, 1980. John Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono are returning to the Dakota, their apartment building on Manhattan's Upper West Side. They've been at the recording studio working on music. Earlier that day, Lennon had signed an autograph for a man waiting outside the building, a man named Mark David Chapman. Now, as Lennon walks toward the entrance, Chapman is still there, waiting. As Lennon passes, Chapman calls out, "Mr. Lennon," pulls out a revolver and fires 5 shots. 4 hit Lennon in the back. He staggers into the building's vestibule, says, "I'm shot," and collapses. He's rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, but the damage is too severe. At 11:07 p.m., John Lennon is pronounced dead. He was 40 years old. The news spreads quickly. Within hours, thousands of people gather outside the Dakota, holding candles, singing, grieving together. Radio stations play his music continuously. The world stops to mourn. A generation that grew up with the Beatles, that found meaning in Lennon's music and message, suddenly has to confront that he's gone, not from illness, not from an accident, but murdered by someone who claimed to admire him. Here's the thing that I always wonder about. What was going through Lennon's mind in those final moments? He'd just had one of the most productive days in years, working on music he was excited about. He'd been gracious to a fan earlier, signing an autograph, probably thinking nothing of it. He was walking home to his family, and then in an instant, everything ended. Let me build the clock for you, because understanding how this tragedy happened requires examining not just one disturbed individual, but the entire machinery of modern celebrity culture, mental health systems, and the particular kind of obsession that fame can generate. Think about it this way. Mark David Chapman wasn't a stranger to John Lennon in the traditional sense. He knew everything about Lennon, his music, his life, his beliefs, his daily routines. He'd studied him, followed his career, built an entire relationship with him in his mind. Chapman felt deeply connected to Lennon. The problem was that it was entirely one-sided. Lennon had no idea Chapman existed until the day he died. Here's what the evidence tells us. Chapman had been planning this for months. He'd traveled to New York specifically to kill Lennon. He'd purchased a gun. He'd researched Lennon's movements. He knew where Lennon lived, where he went, and when he came and went. And critically, this is important. He'd told people what he was planning. He'd made statements about wanting to kill Lennon, but those warnings never connected to any system that could have intervened. Think about what Chapman was experiencing. The investigator in me looks at the evidence and sees someone in severe psychological crisis. Chapman was struggling with depression, identity issues, and an increasingly distorted relationship with reality. He'd become obsessed with the book The Catcher in the Rye, identifying with its alienated protagonist. He'd become convinced that Lenin was a phony, that his wealth and fame contradicted his earlier messages about peace and simplicity. But here's where it gets more complicated, and this is where my investigator's training becomes crucial. Chapman wasn't psychotic in the legal sense. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew it was murder. In fact, after shooting Lenin, he didn't run. He pulled out his copy of The Catcher in the Rye and sat down to wait for the police. He wanted to be caught. He wanted the attention. He wanted, in some twisted way, to become famous himself through this act. I find myself thinking about the position we put famous people in. John Lennon lived in New York specifically because he could walk around relatively freely, could live a somewhat normal life. He didn't want heavy security. He didn't want to live in a fortress. He wanted to be accessible, to maintain some connection to regular life. That openness, that accessibility, it made him vulnerable. And here's what troubles me. Chapman exploited that accessibility. Earlier that day, Lenin had signed his autograph. He'd been kind to this man, and that same man used that access to murder him. Now here's what happened in the aftermath. Chapman was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. He's still there, having been denied parole multiple times, but his crime achieved exactly what he wanted. It made him famous. Every year on the anniversary of Lenin's death, Chapman's name appears in news stories. His infamy is permanent, tied forever to Lenin's legacy, and that creates a terrible incentive. If you're someone desperate for attention, desperate to matter, desperate to be remembered, well, killing someone famous guarantees you'll never be forgotten. Your name will be linked to theirs forever. It's a horrifying calculus, but it's one that plays out again and again. We're still facing this same dynamic today, and I think this is where the story gets especially relevant for us right now. Look at how we relate to celebrities, how we consume their lives, how we build parasocial relationships where we feel we know them intimately, even though they don't know we exist. The machinery that created the conditions for Lenin's murder, that machinery is more powerful now than ever before. Here's what fascinates me. In 1980, you could be a fan by buying albums, reading magazines, maybe seeing concerts. Now you can follow celebrities on social media. You can see what they're eating for breakfast. You can know their opinions in real time. You can feel connected to them every single day. The illusion of intimacy is more potent than ever. Think about it. When someone responds to your comment on social media, when you see their daily life through Instagram stories, when you feel like you understand them through their posts, you're building a relationship, but it's entirely one-sided. They don't actually know you. They're not actually your friend, but your brain doesn't always recognize that distinction. The pattern repeats. Since Lenin's death, we've seen other celebrities attacked by obsessed fans. Rebecca Schaeffer, murdered by a stalker in 1989. Gianni Versace, murdered by an obsessed follower. Christina Grimmie was shot by a fan at a meet and greet, and countless other attacks that didn't end in death. Stalkers, break-ins, attempted assaults. What connects all these cases? A disturbed individual who built an imaginary relationship with a celebrity, whose reality became increasingly distorted, who had access to weapons, and who slipped through every system designed to identify and help people in crisis. Here's what troubles me. We haven't solved this problem. If anything, we made it worse. Social media amplifies obsession. 24-hour news coverage, rewards sensational violence with attention, and our mental health system still struggles to identify and help people before they become dangerous. I find myself thinking about this a lot because we face multiple challenges simultaneously. We have people suffering from severe mental health crises who aren't getting adequate treatment. We have a culture that creates and amplifies celebrity obsession. We have easy access to weapons, and we have a media system that gives killers exactly what they want, fame through association with their victims. Think about the position celebrities are in now. Do they live in fortress-like compounds with heavy security? Do they sacrifice any semblance of normal life? Or do they try to maintain accessibility and connection with fans, knowing that among millions of genuine admirers, there might be someone like Chapman? And think about the position we're all in as a society. We love celebrity culture. We consume it voraciously. We want access to the lives of famous people. But that same access creates vulnerability. The more we know about celebrities, the more potential stalkers know too. So as we think about that December night in 1980, when John Lennon walked home for the last time, I think the question for us isn't really about security protocols or gun control, though those are part of the conversation. The deeper question is about the kind of culture we've created and whether it makes tragedies like this almost inevitable. I believe in human goodness. I believe most people who admire celebrities are healthy, normal individuals who can distinguish between appreciation and obsession. But I also know from years in law enforcement that systems have to account for outliers. We can't just hope that disturbed individuals won't exist, or won't have access to weapons, or won't slip through the cracks. Here's what the investigator in me sees. Chapman showed warning signs. He told people about his plans. He was clearly in a psychological crisis. But there was no system to identify him, no mechanism to intervene, no way to stop him before he acted. We had all the pieces, the warning signs, the knowledge that celebrity stalking is dangerous, the understanding that obsessed individuals can become violent. But we couldn't assemble them into prevention. We still can't. We've improved some things. Better security for public figures, more awareness of stalking behaviors, and slightly better mental health resources. But the fundamental challenges remain. How do you identify someone in crisis before they act? How do you intervene without violating civil liberties? How do you balance celebrities' desire for a normal life with their security needs? How do you provide mental health treatment to people who don't seek it? I don't have easy answers, but I know this. John Lennon died because multiple systems failed simultaneously. The mental health system failed to identify and help Chapman. The celebrity culture created an environment where obsession could flourish. The weapon access system allowed a disturbed person to obtain a gun. And the security system couldn't protect Lennon without him living in a prison of his own. Think about what we've lost. Lennon was 40 years old. He was making new music. He was raising his son. He had decades of creativity ahead of him. All of that ended because one disturbed person with a gun turned obsession into murder. And here's what really troubles me. Chapman got precisely what he wanted. He's famous. His name is permanently attached to one of the most important cultural figures of the 20th century. Every article about Lennon mentions his killer. Every anniversary brings his name back into the news. We've given him the immortality he craved. Maybe that's something we need to think about. When we cover these tragedies, when we discuss these crimes, do we need to focus less on the killers and more on the victims? Do we need to deny killers the fame they seek? I don't know if that would prevent future tragedies, but it might remove one incentive. The great philosopher George Santayana once wrote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." And here's why that matters today. Lenin's death taught us about the dangerous intersection of celebrity culture, mental illness, obsessive fandom, and easy access to weapons. Yet since 1980, we've seen the pattern repeat. Rebecca Schaeffer, Christina Grimmie, and countless other attacks on public figures by obsessed individuals. We've made celebrity culture more invasive through social media, creating even stronger illusions of intimacy between fans and famous people. We haven't adequately funded mental health systems to identify and help people in crisis before they become dangerous. And we haven't figured out how to balance public figures' desire for an accessible, normal life with their security needs. If we cannot remember why Lenin died, not because of one disturbed individual, but because of systemic failures in mental health, celebrity culture, and violence prevention, we're condemned to keep losing talented people to the same preventable tragedy. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, think about how we relate to public figures, how we identify people in crisis, and what kind of culture we're creating. Because that's what Lenin's death teaches us. Not just about one tragic night, but about whether we're building systems that protect people or systems that make violence inevitable. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, then please tell a friend. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.